Hi, I'm Matt from hockeyreviews.ca, and this is the CCM 4-Roll Pro 3 glove review. I made posts about these, seeing some NHL players use these last season, and I was excited to see a new 4-roll come out to the market. These ones had advertised D3O on them. CCM has recently had some pretty interesting 4-rolls. I thought the 4-Roll Pro 2s were pretty good, and these ones are obviously the next iteration of them, and they're pretty interesting, and I wanted to take a look at them, so I ended up buying these so I could do a full review on them, check them out, and actually use them. I did already a full review of the Tax XF Pro gloves, which I talked about, which you can see up over there. These ones are also considered Tax, but they're obviously the 4-rolls. Now we are going to do our hand test, and we're also going to do the grip test with a stick to see how the palms of these feel. But I have used these gloves for a few months now. I bought them just because I thought the 4-roll Pro 2s were pretty interesting, and these ones looked fantastic, and they look very similar to what the Pro Stock ones are. So I want to see if this was a Pro Stock glove in retail form or very, very close to it. And I found a lot of companies now are cheapening out on their 4-rolls, and CCM kind of isn't, so I wanted to take a look at that to see if these are actually pretty good. So before we begin the actual review, one of the things people always mentioned is how clean and classic 4-rolls look, kind of like this. So if you're a fan of 4-rolls like these gloves, is there something you look for specifically in a 4-roll to make sure kind of keep that clean look for it? Does this edged piece matter to you? Does the 3-piece fingers matter to you? Or do you want something like an old Eagle glove, 2-piece fingers, very straight backhand? What's important to you in a 4-roll? Let me know in the comments below to see if stuff like this is what people are looking for, or if they want that really classic glove. So obviously on here, the most important part is aesthetics. These are extremely clean, and CCM did a really good job on these to make them look as pro stock as possible. You have two different types of nylons on the backhand, and you have basically just an almost Gen Pro, which is a goalie pad material, like a fake leather look on the cuff logo itself, and that is it. Everything else on here is extremely pro stock looking. Even the logos themselves aren't textured, and they're pretty just screen printed on to be as minimalistic as possible. And these things honestly really do look like a pro stock glove. This is a pair of pro stock CCM gloves, and you can see they do have that same kind of two different textured of nylons on there, and this thing specifically looks just like one of those pro stock gloves. So very, very good job from CCM on that sense. I'm making this glove look like the things that the actual players are wearing. This is obviously the Maple Leafs colorway, which I think looks fantastic, and is one of the reasons I bought it, because it works. It's a very clean, just blue with the white cuff. Everyone knows what it is, and it just works with a ton of jerseys. So I bought this for that reason. I think it looks pretty good, but overall the graphics and everything on here look fantastic. And even the little details on here, where this is the blue, this is the white through the actual backhand rolls, is a nice little touch as well. They didn't have to do that, but it does give it a nice little bit of accent colors on the backhand, which I am a huge fan of. I've had people ask me over and over again of what socks I always recommend, and I've been using Cutshield for a while now. I have multiple stuff for them. So Cutshield is a company out of Canada that makes cut resistant socks, and these are their Pro Air 6, which means it's an ANSI level 6 for cut resistance on here. Full review of it up there so you can check it out. But I now have a coupon code with Cutshield, so if you want to support the channel, you can check out the link in the description to Cutshield, buy some socks, which I think are honestly one of the better socks on the market. I absolutely love them. They're pretty thin, and they are cut resistant, and they're not too hot either. Use my coupon code, you get 25% off, and it helps support the channel. Now on to the actual design itself. Obviously this is a 4-roll, and you can see it in the backhand, pretty straightforward design. It does have a bit of angle to it, and this one isn't a total just rectangular piece, so it really does move with your fingers a bit more, which I'll talk about in the dexterity part. But pretty overall simple idea behind this. Same with everything over here. Everything is pretty simple, but that's not a bad thing. It's kind of a traditional design, and they're kind of doing a more minimalist take of things. Instead of being crazy over the top, it is pretty straightforward. And this honestly just does feel like a very traditional 4-roll and classic glove. Same with the cuffs, which when you look at it is just kind of a 3-piece part here, but very standard, nothing crazy going on here. For the thumb, you have your 2-piece flex thumb right there. They call it their Pro Flex thumb, and you can see it move like that. It actually moves pretty good, especially compared to like the recent retail models we looked at for the Tax. This one feels like it's a lot more broken in. The hyper extension piece on it isn't the best. You can see it really kind of moving more in there. You can feel the side part down here kind of hitting into your hand. You can see it moving like that, but it's not really getting stuck anywhere. So you would basically need that to come straight out more to really help with hyperextension. But this kind of seems like an idea that is kind of being lost a lot on gloves now. They're kind of becoming more flexible outwards, just so it flexes all over the place more. But decent thumb design overall. And you do have a hard plastic in here as well as a plastic outer piece. So you do have a plastic piece right here, a piece of foam, and then padding behind it, which is definitely better than what we saw on the XF Pro, where there was no plastic in this outer piece. And having that plastic insert is definitely going to help more. Then onto the cuff itself, it does feel like there's a PU insert, and you can kind of see it right there. It is pretty thin and it does flex, but it has a pretty decently dense cuff. You can fold it right here, but when you're squeezing kind of this way, it does feel it's like it's pretty dense all around. It can flex a bit that way, and you can definitely flex it this way, but there is that definite, and I can really feel it right there, that plastic insert right there to give you extra protection. And the nice thing on this cuff is on the backhand, you can see it does kind of come all the way down. So there's no flex cuff, so there's not really a gap. There is a tiny gap here, but the backhand has that liner covering it a little bit, but there's no flex cuff for that spandex. So you get extra protection going through here all the way through. And same with this piece over here, where you still do have padding right in there. While there is that little gap right there that allows this to kind of come out and everything, it is still covered. So it should be better than what was on the tacks. And then still same padding over here. This is all just a foam back here. There is a plastic insert on the top of this one, but this is all just a foam. So there's no plastic inserts through that. When you get on the undercuff, this is something I think could be slightly better. It does open pretty well, and you can see I have no issues with this kind of flexing that way. You'd really have to go more. But I know some people really like the negative kind of attachment pieces here. There is a little spandex piece right here, but there isn't on here. So really this side piece could flex out more, but I never noticed an issue with this whatsoever. But if you really wanted to, you could just cut the stitching right here to really open that up and flare it out, kind of like this one does on the Pro Stock one more, but zero issues with it getting in the way at all. And speaking at that cuff, we do look at elbow pad integration. Now these are 14s. When I normally say I wear 15s for retail, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but this is basically the glove that I would wear for retail. And you can see the coverage on tacks and the Jet Speed ones. So the Jet Speed ones definitely come down a little bit more. These are large elbow pads for both of these, and there is no interference whatsoever on the tacks, but the tacks do really taper down on there. So you can see that's going through there, zero issues whatsoever. On the Jet Speed, it definitely has more overlap, as you can see, because the Jet Speeds do come down a little bit lower than tacks do. But I never had issues actually playing with these whatsoever. I used these in my last game. I never noticed this. It feels like you really could get it under there if you really fight hard, but with a jersey on and everything, I have a hard time feeling that's going to get in the way, and I never noticed it getting in the way whatsoever. But you can see have a little bit of restriction that way. Really, you'd really have to push up to get in the way, but going down and everything, no issues whatsoever. Now, when I wore my Evo Shield and Cutshield pieces in here, I did feel a little bit more snug on here than I would prefer. These are a bit tighter on the backhand cuff. You can see how on the actual wrist bone itself, like right there, it does have a bit tighter. So I did feel a little bit more snug on there than I would prefer with the Cutshield. So I could wear these with my Cutshield wrist guards, but if you are wearing them, you can just have to lay them up a little bit higher and you don't really have many issues. On the cuff and how it interacts with the back end, you can see it flexing over the back totally fine when you really stretch it out there. There is a little hang up on this part sometimes, but once it really gets over there once, it's totally fine, as you can see, and the whole piece just floats over that back. So it moves really easy with it and doesn't get in the way. Same with this back end. You can just see how much that's moving out of the way. So very little restrictions on it that way. And on the side, I can't even flex it really to ever get it in the way of anything. It just works really well. So that whole cuff and everything is doing what you'd expect. We go on to the liner. It's the same thing as the Tacx XF. You have that interesting sublimated liner look through here. And this does have Polygene as well, which is supposed to help with smells and kind of kill the things that make things smell. But this Tacx liner through here, and then the more standard kind of almost Pro Stock material back here, as well as on the backhand liner, which is actually slightly thicker than I was expecting on a 4-roll, which I wish this was still thicker because I prefer that style of glove, but this is totally fine and has a bit of softness to it to give a little bit extra protection and a little bit extra of comfort back there. And then while looking in there, you can see the palm, which is their Sensi-Lass palm. So we kind of talked about Sensi-Lass on the XF Pro gloves, but these ones feel very similar, even though these ones are called the Sensi-Lass Pros. These ones are just called the Sensi-Lass, but it feels very similar without the little textured features on there. I don't mind this stuff because it is just kind of pressed into the actual palm material itself versus having a textured piece on there. So this is totally fine, but it is an extra layer on top, as you can see, on the palm itself, going all the way through there and on the thumb. But it doesn't go right to the top of the thumb, so it's more of just the basically down here of the thumbs. But you can see double layer here, and when you look on the inside, you can see that kind of seam for it and where the palm connects. Now, when we grab our textured stick for the grip test, we put it on there, and for sliding it and feeling it, it does feel pretty grippy and it feels pretty solid for that sense. Pretty much the exact same as the XF Pro. Gloves, I really can't tell a huge difference between these palms. This one feels a little bit less kind of cardboardy, and I think it might be that coating on it, but this one feels fine and it grips pretty well. Now, testing this 3D texture, I can't feel the texture at all through the double layer, which is to be expected. To be honest, you kind of need a single layer to feel that texture through it. But once I put my fingertips on it, I can definitely feel that texture going through it. without an issue whatsoever. So that single layer really makes a big difference in terms of how much of that texture you can feel, but the fingers you can really feel through it and it feels really good. And for the thumb, I honestly can't feel the texture either, just because when I wear this glove, my thumb ends up rubbing on that second layer. So sometimes, like right now, my thumb's up here, but when it actually goes on and you try to squeeze, you can see how that thumb's kind of bunching up. So my thumbs don't really hit that single layer. It ends up going on the second layer, and I can't feel that kind of textured feeling at all through it. So it does just feel standard. So the only part you really do feel the texture is through the fingertips, which you can feel totally fine through here. The glove grips pretty good as well. When I really squeeze on here, you can see it barely moves, and you really do have to loosen off to feel it. So it does have a decent amount of grip on there, as well as allowing enough of that texture feeling to go through. Another nice part about the palms, it does have these holes in it for breathability. We saw that on the other tax glove as well. Just a nice little feature, and it does definitely work. You can definitely feel kind of the cold air coming through there. When we get onto the finger design for the palms and the gussets, you can see it has that spandex piece on the sides with the Nash tips. So the whole point of this, and I'll iterate this again and again, spandex is for comfort. So when you put this on, it flexes and stretches, so it is more comfortable. You can see it stretch right there. The Nash tips are so your fingers don't really jut out past the ends of the gloves. As you can see, my finger is kind of doing there when you really push through it. But the Nash tips help keep the finger protection better because the gloves itself stops it from pushing back right here. So when a stick comes down, you have more of the padding covering your fingertips. This is a fantastic design, and I love that CCM is doing this. This is what is on most Pro Stock gloves, especially their offerings. So I really love to see it at retail. This is something they didn't do in the past for a lot of their gloves, and they're bringing it more and more. So this is an excellent design. And even these gloves, we'll talk about fit in a second. Like you can see my fingers kind of coming through it. When you compare it to that double design, you can see the difference right there. So that finger comes a lot further through on the XF Pros than it does on the 4-rolls. These fit slightly differently, but now that is kind of what they're getting away from by having this all Nash versus Nash and spandex right there. So I love to see that on here. Now, since we're on the finger parts right here, we're going to talk about the actual fingers designs themselves, which you can see have a 3-piece middle and index finger, which I love to see and is kind of rare on 4-roll gloves. I think True is doing this on their new 4-roll gloves as well. Bauer is 2, CCM old models used to be 2, and I think Warrior new ones are also 2. So having 3-piece there is really nice because you can see for protection, you get more coverage and less gaps and holes in there. And while there is a kind of gap here and I can kind of go all the way down my fingers, it's a lot harder. And once you get a stick in there, that is going to be even harder because it's going to hit the other gaps of the actual fingers. So it's a nice added piece in there, having this extra piece. I would love to see CCM do it one more on here just to go crazy. That's a little overkill at this point, but these really work well for added protection, and it gives you a ton of dexterity in the glove too. You can see how easy these fingers move and how much they move, and this glove still isn't totally broken in, and you can see how much that backhand moves down to really kind of move with your hand and feel a lot better than just a boxy 4-roll. So when you move that down, you can see it's moving with your hand, and it's going to do more and more. And eventually these are going to break in, so it ends up being rolled like that. You could actually see a ton of old CCM 4-roll gloves in the NHL. Pecan Subban is an example who wore kind of like Easton style. These are semi-similar to that, and you're going to see these really broken in. And once you wear these, and these gloves are really going to kind of fold a lot more with your hand, and they're going to be very nice to actually close. It's just going to kind of all roll over. It was kind of a famous Easton look, and I think these are going to be very similar to that. You can just kind of see how the design is. It kind of works for that roll, so it's a nice touch, and I think these are really solid. I also like how it does have the separators here. One, these kind of help a little bit to give it some more shape. So without these, it would be a little bit flatter up there. So when they're in there, they're kind of just forcing these pieces away a little bit. So it does help it kind of fold, as well as when you do have a piece like this that folds out, it does give a little bit extra of a harder piece to get in there. So when you can jab a stick in there, this piece kind of just sits in the middle a little bit and kind of gets in the way there. So just a nice little attention to detail and touch that isn't totally needed, but I like it sitting there. So the weird part about this one though, you can see how it's stitched right here, and it's stitched into kind of this piece down here. So you can see it's coming onto this roll and not in between. And if it was in between, it would fold kind of, actually they're all stitched there, which is kind of odd. If it was stitched right in the middle piece, it wouldn't fold down like this. Because really, when you're doing this, you don't want this to be flat. You want it to kind of sit up a little bit more, like I mentioned, to kind of just get in the way. And CCM does that on these gloves. You can see this piece right here in there. When you kind of do it, it stays right in the middle of it. So it doesn't ever move out of the way. So it fills in that gap to make it just harder to kind of get into. It also helps push it down, like I mentioned, but it's supposed to kind of sit in the middle like that, which this one did well, but this one doesn't. So I don't know if this is just kind of a defect on this or kind of an oversight during the manufacturing process, but ideally you would want this kind of right in the middle. So when that folds, it doesn't come over and it kind of seals that a little bit more. This isn't a massive issue. And I really don't think right now by me doing this, you're going to get a stick in here or in here that's actually going to stop anything. So you can see it's not really going in there as is. So I don't think that's going to cause any issues, but it's just something I think could be improved on there. So it'd be nice to see that. For mobility and dexterity on this, I kind of showed how the backhand breaks a lot, which is nice. The fingers do as well, obviously with your 3-piece fingers, which are very nice and they feel fantastic. This glove, again, hasn't really been broken in all that much. It's me just wearing it for like a few months and it's not a huge break-in job. Splitting this with some other gloves for testing purposes. So it feels fantastic as is. Pinky to thumb can be done, but it's a lot harder than some other gloves. And the reason is there's no breaks back here. So sometimes what companies are doing is they're kind of going on the sides now. So when you try to do that, this hand will really kind of break and come down. This is a pretty traditional 4-roll backhand. It does have some angle to it, but because of that, it is kind of restricting this way motion. Whereas gloves like this that have that separator, when you do that, it kind of splits apart to make it easier. It's doable. It's not the best. I'm sure breaking this in will work a bit more for that, but fine overall. And I've never really had any issues with it. So going on to foam package and for protection on this. So CCM advertises their D3O material through here, and it is said to be in the backhand. So I think it is this piece kind of right here, and you can see how this folds a lot and is really soft all the way through. It doesn't feel like there's multi-density foams back here. It really feels like, especially when you close it like this and you can really kind of squeeze in there, it feels like it's a single density foam throughout the whole thing. So I have a feeling this whole backhand piece is that D3O. Now, with that said, previously when we looked at D3O foams, like on this, which this whole like foam package is just D3O, it's extremely dense. So you can see how dense that is through there. This does not have that density as what the other one does. So you can see squeezing that and it's a lot softer than what that other one was. And this piece doesn't even have a plastic insert for this part. So you can really touch it and kind of squeeze it. And it doesn't feel like it's all that dense of a foam. So I'm curious to see how much D3O they actually use in here, because look at that density. It's not a lot, but it does have plastic inserts, which is good. The foam package down here is their soft foam. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but they call it their soft foam, and then a denser foam on top. It doesn't say it uses D3O in the fingers, so kind of a downgrade from some gloves in the past, but it's still pretty solid with a plastic insert on top, and that's all the way through. So this is the same kind of foam package on the fingers as the XF Pro, but there is a big difference between the two, and that is specifically the size of the foam finger pack. So when you put these next to each other like that, look at how much more of foam you get on the 4 rolls. You get more foam on there, so you're going to have more protection because of the higher height on them. It's a great idea, especially when you're doing a 4-roll glove, which is not the most mobile glove in the first place. So why not get more protection? Soft foam basically through here too, with that plastic insert, same thing. And same thing right here. So you have plastic insert up here, not a plastic insert over here, but this is a lot more of a dense foam on the side. And well, this whole piece is a lot more dense than what these pieces are. So not having that plastic insert here isn't the biggest loss. And then you do have another dense piece of foam right here with plastic insert, and then softer foam right here with that plastic insert. So for protection on this, I've had 0 issues with this gloves, and I have blocked some pucks for it right there. But just to do very basic mini stick protection test, we're going to test all this out. And after doing that test and comparing it with other gloves, I even compared it with this glove, which is that Pro Stock with the full D3O foam package on the backhand. This glove honestly performed the best on that backhand test than any of them, including the FT6 Pro, including these. D3O here is actually hard right now, where it gets softer over time when you wear it and it heats up, so it becomes more comfortable, but it's still protective. This felt better than all those did on the backhand. So even though it doesn't feel like it's super dense like the other one, it performed very, very well. So I'm surprised at that. I thought this was actually going to perform not as well because of how lack of density it has on there, but it was really good for that. For the fingers, honestly, this is fantastic for the fingers. I can barely feel that at all, and it's because of how tall this soft foam is. So amazing job they did on the fingers there as well. Going on the side, this one is definitely not the best. It is that hard piece right there, and it doesn't have anything else. So not the best feeling on that one. The thumb is so much better than what was on the XF Pro because it has that plastic insert and then foam package. So much better on there too. And the cuff on this is fantastic as well. And a lot of that has to do with all of that cuff and then this cuff behind it. So it does a really good job, and it doesn't have that gap on the side here. So it does a very good job protection. So protection on this glove is very, very good. And even on the outside, you have a little piece of foam right there, the plastic insert, same thing on all sides. This is really soft, so you don't get a ton back there. But the protection on this is very solid. While I was a little bit questioning how soft this D3O backhand is, it works extremely well, and I'm very impressed with it. While I don't weigh gloves anymore because people chase numbers too much and think that actually matters, holding these up, this glove actually feels lighter than what the XF Pro does, but it's pretty close. But this thing feels very light in the hands. It doesn't feel like a heavy pro stock glove like this does. It feels like a pretty light retail glove. It's not the lightest thing because it still has those plastic inserts on there, unlike some other companies. So it feels fantastic. And balance on it is still very good as well. The weight's kind of all back here. It's not falling off your hands from the weight, and it doesn't feel like it's too cumbersome, so it works really well in that sense. And you want to support the channel, and you need a base layer and a protective portive base layer that helps protect your growing as well as your hips. Check out the Cortec. This is the Pro 1.0 pant, so this one is not quite as restrictive, and this is kind of tight right here in this X pattern. You might have seen these as Under Armour before, or Bauer for the hockey specific ones. There's also the Core 3.0, which is a lot stiffer, as you can see. Really helps protect my growing and keeping it kind of in place and make sure it doesn't overstretch itself. And you click the link in the description, use that discount code to get a discount off, help support myself, as well as get you some pretty awesome base layer pants that really do help with injury prevention and help stabilize your core while playing. For sizing and for fit on here, we're going to do our hand test. We have a 14-inch hand and a 15-inch hand that's closer to my hand size. We're going to throw them in here, see how it fits, so you can compare it to all other gloves that we've done in the past. We have the 15-inch 3D printed hand in there and the 14-inch in here. And when we look at the 15 on the right, you can see the fingers are going right to the ends, but they're not blowing past it. So this is that case of this glove fitting basically like a 14.5 compared to what we see on other retail ones. And you can see like right here is a good example where that 14 doesn't come to the end and you can squeeze that through. Same with this one as well. The index fingers are always kind of closer, but it still has a little bit of a gap there. So you do have some extra play on there. So this glove definitely doesn't fit like that standard 14. It fits more like a pro stock 14 for CCM, which ends up being 14.5. And compared to the Tax XF Pro, these definitely fit like that half size bigger, because you can see the difference just in my fingers blowing out. Now that is partially due to that spandex, but even here, my fingers are touching the ends and they're not going totally past. So you can definitely see the difference in length on these, where the Tax 4-Roll Pro 3 definitely does fit like a 14.5. You can see it in the cuff and everything as well, it just plays bigger. So the fact that this glove is basically the same weight, or if not a little bit lighter than this glove is, and it is bigger, is pretty impressive. And that's the other part of these gloves, is the overall fit profile. And they're just boxy, to be honest. They're not really anatomical. They're pretty wide. You can see how wide it is. It's pretty square. And for looseness, they're pretty loose. And honestly, they feel very close to what the XF Pros are in terms of overall looseness. You can see like that. Now the thing with this glove, and I talked about it on the XF Pro, the backhand's loose, the fingers are loose, but the cuff is a bit tighter than what you see like in Vapor gloves or the Jet Speeds, where the cuff kind of blooms out. It doesn't really bloom all that much on here. And I'm talking about this cuff specifically because you can see how kind of tight that is on the backhand here, but it doesn't feel like it's restrictive or anything. It's just tighter here than it kind of is back here, and it comes off pretty easily. For me, this is a bit looser than I wish. I would prefer this to be a bit more padded, but that's my preference. I like really snug gloves. So if you're looking for a basically traditional 4-roll style feeling glove, this one is very close to that. And this one plays like a 14.5 too, right? So a lot of people who wear 4 rolls want the gloves to fit a bit bigger. So if you're in a 15 retail for most things, a 15 on this is definitely going to be bigger, and it's going to be looser than what you're kind of used to. If like you wear a 14 in CCM gloves like these, or a Jet Speed, going a 14 on this, these are going to be probably massive, to be honest. So you might want to go down to a 13, but these do fit bigger than their size by that kind of pro stock standard, and they are pretty loose on the backhand, which that is what people want on 4 rolls. So that's how they play, and they're only going to get looser with use. So overall, this glove is very, very impressive for what it is, and it is solid. The finger design is excellent, having those 3-piece index and middle finger. And unlike some other companies with their 4 rolls where they're cheapening out, this is a fantastic glove, and honestly feels like it's one of the best in the ranges. While I like the XF Pro and I like the tech on here with the shop locker and with the Nest Tech, this thing honestly just feels like it's almost a slightly better glove. Now, I do wish some features were on this glove that don't exist on it. I really like the air tech on here. I think it really works well. You can feel it, especially with how it is on the thumb as well. And it kind of has that better breathability throughout it. I wish CCM kind of did something similar with this glove. I would love to see that air tech here. I would love to see air knit right on the fingertips instead of that kind of Nash feeling on here. So you get the benefits of not stretching out, but you do get some breathability. And I would love to see them throw Nest Tech somewhere on here, or just the air tech holes what were on the FT6 Pro, just so you get some more breathability on this thing. Like the old 4-roll Pros, Teuvo Teravainen had a pair. They have like vents through the backhand and through the side, and he still wears them for pro stock ones. I would love to see something like that, even if you can incorporate it kind of like this into their 4-rolls, just so you get some of that airflow, because these things definitely ran a lot hotter than what these did with that Nest Tech and Air Tech design behind it. So while these are a fantastic glove and I have no problems recommending them, and I think they're very, very good overall, I would just like to see some of that tech shared along this line. I get for the 4-roll Pro 3, 4-rolls are generally the less techy gloves and less innovative glove, and they're more of a traditional style of glove. But again, I get it. It's almost a pro stock glove, and kind of do something more traditional for those fans. But this is an excellent glove, and honestly, it's my 4-roll recommendation right now for retail by far. I haven't seen the new True ones yet, which looked very impressive as well. This thing is awesome, and these are really good gloves. Easy thing to recommend, so make sure you check them out. So that's about it for this video of the CCM 4-roll Pro 3 glove review. Obviously, I'm impressed with this. I bought these on my own accord so I could take a look at them and review them. I spotted these gloves worn Montreal Canadiens for Josh Anderson a while ago, called it out, mentioned I need to try these because they look amazing, and I ended up buying them just so I could do this review on them and take a look on ice. So if this review was helpful to you, you want to see more of this kind of content, please let CCM know on social media, because like I mentioned, I paid for this as well as the Tax SF Pros because I wanted to take a look at them and let people know about how good their gloves are. So it'd be greatly appreciated in that sense. Remember to like this video, subscribe to me on YouTube, follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Links are in the description. If you want to support the channel and you're buying hockey equipment anyways, and here in the US or Canada, check out the links in the description to Just Hockey. Clicking that link, making a purchase gives me a kickback, helps support the channel so I can make more videos and do more reviews like this one. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel without buying anything hockey related, check out the links in the description to Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee. Everything through any of those links always comes back into the channel so I can keep making more videos like this and doing more reviews.
You're watching HockeyReviews.ca.